Good day, this is Julianne Retumban presenting the unit of competency under the core competencies of photography NC2. The objectives. At the end of the lesson, the student must be able to define basic studio lighting, enumerate the studio gear, analyze how to deal with multiple lights, and perform the common setups and styles. Studio lights are any form of lighting equipment used by photographers, often when working in a photography studio to enhance their photography. Most professional photographers have different light kits they use depending on the situation they find themselves shooting in. So let's move forward with the studio gears. So there are 4 components under the studio gears. The first one are the lights. So the first type of light is the flash. Flash is known as reliable and good or portable. The second one is the strobe light. Strobe lights are known as the big guns. And the last type of studio gear under the lights are the LEDs. This light is not as bright, but it gives a nice soft light. Let's proceed with the second category under the studio gear, which are the light stands. This is the light stand. In placing the lights on, it is preferable to look for the air cushion once to prevent nasty slumps. The next one is the boom arm. Boom arm gives you more creative space and holds the light high up. Another category under the studio gear are the soft boxes. The first type of soft boxes are called octagons. You may think of these octagons as the oversized spotlights. The next type of soft boxes are called the rectangular or the sphere. So this type of soft boxes evenly lights up a certain area. The fourth category under the studio gear are the light modifiers. The first type of light modifiers are called grids. These grids are attached to soft boxes and it prevents light spills. The second type of light modifiers are called barn door. This barn door allows us to control the direction of the light. And the last type of light modifiers are called snoot. Snoot puts light onto a single spot. And the following are the other types of studio gear. The backdrop. A black or white backdrop or just a green screen will do. The next one are the reflectors. Reflectors reflects light. And the last one are the color gel. This color gel adds funky colors. Let's proceed with the light setup. For this topic, we're only going to discuss the classic basic setup. So for now, we're only going to tackle the classic basic setup called the 3-point lighting. The 3-point lighting adds dimension. The goal of 3-point lighting is to create the illusion of a 3-dimensional subject in a 2-dimensional image. While you can create a dimensional number of different ways, there is no doubt that using light and shadow is a powerful way to accomplish this. And 3-point lighting is the lighting technique most commonly used. So, what are those 3 points of lighting we're talking about? Those are the key light, free light, and the backlight. So the key light, this is the main light used on your subject. While the fill light, the purpose of this light is to fill in the shadows created by the key light, preventing them from getting too dark. And lastly, the backlight, this is used to separate the subject from the background. So here's a video of how to set up a 3-point lighting.
Hi there, I'm Grover Austin, Course Director in the Lighting Department here at Full Sail University. Today we're going to talk about the basics of 3-point lighting. Whether you're working in video or still photography, 3-point lighting is a fundamental method you can use when you want to light a subject so that they can easily be distinguished from a flat background. One of the first things we do in this process is establish the camera to subject axis. It's an imaginary line between the camera and our subject that helps guide us in our lighting. We place the key on one side of the line and the fill on the other. We start with the key light. It's our most powerful, important, and brightest light. We can place the key light on the left or the right side of our axis, depending on our subject and environment. In this case, we've placed it to the left, roughly 45 degrees from our talent, Jana, and at a 45-degree angle above her. The closer we place the key to our camera to subject axis, the flatter the look of our lighting. If we move it further away, it creates more dramatic shadows on the face. Next is our fill, a softer light that takes the edge off the shadows cast by our key. We place the fill close to our camera to subject axis because we don't want to create a second set of shadows. The difference in intensity between the key and the fill will affect how dramatic we can make our subject look. Finally, our backlight separates our subject from the background. A true backlight only lights the back of the head and shoulders, but we can also bring it around to create a splash of light on one side of our subject's face. When we do this, we call it a kicker, which is what we're using in this setup. We usually place the kicker on the opposite side of the axis from the key and further away from our subject. We also want to be careful to not bring it around so far that it interferes with the shadows cast by the key. And those are the basics of three-point lighting.
And that will be all for the light setup. Now I'm going to proceed with the third subtopic, which is how to set up and deal with multiple lights. The first step is to start with the background. Start dealing with the natural light first, meter the background, and estimate the V settings. The second step is to add key light. Place your subjects and add a key light to the setup. Take test photos and readjust until you are satisfied. And the third and the last step is to add the fill light. By this time, you can add any fill lights as required. Again, you can take test photos and readjust until you are satisfied. That would be all for the setting up and dealing with multiple lights. Now, I am going to proceed with the fourth and last subtopic of this lesson, which are the common setups and styles. These are the classics that you should know: the high key lighting, the low key lighting, the clamshell lighting, and the split lighting. The first and second common setup and style are called the high key and the low key. In high key, the bright glamour look usually achieved by well-balanced all-around lighting, and the low key, the opposite of the high key, it portrays the dark dramatic look. Now let's watch how does a high key and low key works.
Hey everybody, Lindsay Adler here, and I'd like to begin by talking about the differences between high key and low key lighting. So what do those terms mean? Fundamentally, high key lighting is when an image is made up of predominantly lighter tones. So in other words, there's not too much in the way of shadows. However, when you go to a low key image, it means most of the image is predominantly darker tones, more shadows, a lot of depth and dimension. So when I'm thinking about the moods created by these two styles of lighting, I'm thinking high key means bright or happy, upbeat, ethereal. Any of those descriptors are a perfect indication of when I'd want to grab high key lighting. Right, now let's go to the opposite side. Let's go with low key. I think of dramatic, sculptural, dark, mysterious. And so if that's what I'm looking for out of a photograph, well then I gravitate to low key lighting. You can create high key or low key lighting no matter how many pieces of gear you have. So even if you just have natural light, 1 strobe, 2 strobes, or 10 strobes, you can use the light and shape the light to be either a high key look or a low key look. All right, so what I'd like to do in this video is take you through how I use 2 strobes and I make little changes to take the image from something really glowing and really high key to suddenly really dark and dramatic. All right, let's talk about the lighting. We're going to begin with our main light. Now, if I want to create a high key image, I need to create minimal shadows. And to do that, I want to have my main light more centered on my subject's face, a little bit flatter on, because that reduces the amount of shadows. And so right now I have my beauty dish placed in a paramount lighting position. Paramount means that the shadow underneath her nose is small and centered. All right, so I've got that position of light. Now I've chosen a beauty dish because a beauty dish is both soft and flattering on the skin, but adds a little bit more pop and contrast to the image. So we're going to begin there with strobe number 1. All right, so you can see that there are minimal shadows on her face. There's still a little bit underneath the chin and nose, but we're going to talk about that in a moment. But fundamentally, what's making this image not high key, what's making it a little bit darker, is the background. Now, even though I have chosen a savage super white background, because of fall off of light, it looks dark, it looks gray. So in order to achieve a white background in this instance, I'm going to add my second strobe, which is a bare bulb. It's a strobe with no modifiers at all, and that's going to evenly light the background to give me that high key look I'm going for. All right, now let's take a shot. All right, so now that is moving us much closer to the high key look. All right, now where else do you see shadows? If my goal is high key, well, I'm looking and I see some shadows underneath the chin, maybe a little bit underneath the nose. Now these are not necessarily bad. Shadows add sculpting, they add dimension, they add shape to the face, so I don't necessarily mind these shadows. But let's say that I want to go super glowing and high key and ethereal. Well, this is an opportunity to add a reflector. Now popping that reflector underneath her chin, I can have a white reflector just to lift up and soften the shadows a little bit, or silver if I really want to eliminate those shadows and give me a little bit more contrast to the image. So in the first shot, I've used a white reflector. You'll notice that the shadows are brightened a bit, but you don't really notice the reflector is there. It just kind of lifts up the shadows. But now, when I switch over to a silver reflector, you'll see bright catchlights in her eyes and a lot more contrast and light to fill in those shadows. Neither one is right or wrong. It just depends on what you're going for. So the lighting setup that we have here is one of the most common beauty lighting setups, and it is called clamshell lighting. One light lighting the face and a second light below, so the subject's head is like the pearl and the clam. Essential clamshell lighting, high key because of the white background and minimal shadows. Now before I shoot, I do want to talk a little bit about my camera gear, and I am shooting with the Canon R5, and my lens choice is the RF 85mm 1.2. This is many photographers' go-to portrait lens because it has beautiful compression. And when I want to grab a narrow depth of field, that 1.2 lens is sharp and beautiful. All right, so now I've got that beautiful high key lighting, got the right camera gear, so let me grab the shot. Okay, you look great. Perfect. Can you give me a couple with smiles, a couple giggles? Good. So cute. Beautiful high key shots. Now it's time to go the exact opposite. We need to introduce some shadows and some drama. All right, so let's begin first by removing the reflector. All right, so that gives us a little bit more shadows, but that's not nearly dramatic enough. Now, right now I have that white background. I know that I'm not going to want the background to be pure white, so I am going to use a background light, but let me turn it off for the time being until we get our main light in place. Let me just flip that off. All right, so there are several different ways that I can introduce more shadows through the main light. One of the ways is to move the light further off to the side. That introduces more shadows and more dimension. But I want to show you one of my favorite ways to create more shadow in image, and that is adding a grid. So what grids do fundamentally is they narrow the beam of light. They prevent the spread of the light. Now, what it also has a side effect of doing is it makes it so that less light will reach the background. I have many tutorials that go much more in depth into grids. So I'm going to begin by adding a grid to my beauty dish. So not only did I turn the background light off, but when I add the grid to the beauty dish, that background is going to go nearly black. So I've darkened the background. We've gotten rid of the fill reflector, but how can I make this even more low-key, even more dramatic? What we're going to do is we're going to create something called short light. That means when I move that main light further around to the side, at some point, the shadows are actually pointed towards camera instead of away. The reason it's called short light is the light on her face, the actual illumination, it appears short, like it's smaller. And so I'm going to move that light all the way around to the side, and it's going to create a ton of shadow and a ton of sculpting. Great, and then we turn this way for me. Perfect, right there. Great. I'm going to grab a shot. Beautiful, that's perfect. All right, so let's take a look at the changes here. Now, when I move the light off to short light position, you can see that there's still beautiful exposure, beautiful light on her face, but there is a lot of shadow now, which of course is moving us far in that direction of low key. But you'll also notice that the background appears black. Now, in the previous shot, the background was a little bit of a darker gray, and that's because some of the main light was still reaching that white background. But now that we move the light off to the side, all of the light is kicking the opposite direction of the background, and so it becomes pure black. So this is giving me quite a low key look. However, right now we're only using one strobe. Sure, I could do that, but I actually think we'd benefit and have a little bit more of a refined image by adding our second strobe. So one thing I could do is add the second strobe as a rim light to carve her out from the background. So I add a little bit more depth and dimension. But I actually think in this case, case, I want to use my second strobe as a background light. Now, I do not want to light that entire background white. It defeats the purpose of my low-key image. Instead, I'm just looking for some separation. So we're going to do the same thing we did to the beauty dish. We added a grid there to narrow the light. We're going to also add a grid to our background light. And what that'll do is it'll create just a little bit of light, just a little bit of halo behind my subject, just enough to give us separation, but still maintaining that low-key look. All right, we've added the grid, and you can see behind her head that there's just that beautiful gradient, beautiful halo of light. Now, I could have just used one strobe, but I actually think this looks a little bit more refined, and I think she kind of looks more heavenly and more glowing. All right, so I like the drama that's going on here, and so I'm going to grab a couple of shots of this moodier, more intense look. Okay, just like that's beautiful. So now let's compare our two shots. The first image we have high key, minimal shadows, flat light, main light around to the front, white background. And now our second image, low key, main light off to the side, a lot of shadows and dimension, and just a little bit of kiss of light on the background. One is predominantly lighter tones, one is predominantly darker tones. So which one is better? And the thing is, you can't say, it all depends on your intention. There is no one image better than the other. Remember the adjectives I said in the beginning. Do you want the image to be upbeat and ethereal and glowing? Well, that'd be high key setup. Or do you want it to be mysterious and dark? Well, that would be this low key setup. And so whenever you approach a shoot, you should go in knowing your intentions and the mood you are trying to convey. So what I want you to notice is that these two setups, although they look completely different, involve actually pretty subtle changes. Adding grids and moving the main light off to the side. So if you understand the tools available to you, you can make drastically different looking images in a very short period of time. All right, so now you understand the differences in ways to achieve both high key and low key lighting. So if you want to know the gear used in the making of these images, be sure to check out the links in the description below. And of course, visit adorama.com. And I'm definitely going to suggest that you guys should subscribe, because if you want to know more about lighting, more about fashion and beauty, I've got a lot more videos coming your way. See you next time.
The third one is the clamshell lighting. It is named after how the setup looks, one light on top and one below. This is also known as the butterfly lighting. Let's watch how the clamshell lighting works.
Hi, I'm Jiggy Alejandrino, and we are here in a Photix hang tag shoot. We are supposed to demo all the new lighting modifiers from Photix. So this first setup, we call this the clam-shaped lighting or the clam lighting. It's a standard beauty light. What we will be using is the Spartan beauty dish, as seen here. Standard reflector on a reflector holder. The Photix Indra 500 triggered using the Photix Odin 2 for Sony. The camera system we're using is the Sony A7R with a 70-200 2.8 master lens. So this one will serve as our main light, but then in the course of the shoot, we will be adding some of the accessories to the light, meaning we could put a diffuser, we could put in a grid, maybe we'd take out the reflector and convert this beauty dish into a standard off the back, and then put a grid there and then put a diffuser also. So we'll see. Then we'll play around with a silver reflector and a white reflector just to show the difference. And then we have two kicker lights in the back. Those are two Photix E++ for Sony. Both also remotely controlled using the Sony Odin 2. They're mounted on the Cerberus flash bracket or flash mount. The nice thing about this mount is that basically you could put this modifier here. So instead of using the Indra, we could actually be using the Mitros, but for purposes of the shoot, we'll be using the Indra.
common setup is the split lighting. It gives a dramatic look, only lighting half of the subject. Now let's proceed with a video of how a split lighting works.
Hey, it's Matt Anderson from Viewfinder Mastery here, where we teach you all kinds of skills that help you take your photography further. If you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button and you'll find all the links to everything that we've described in this video down in the description box below. Light is such a crucial aspect of portrait photography and such an important creative factor when it comes to the mood of your photos. So in this video, we're going to explore a technique called split lighting, which is a particularly moody and mysterious light. And we're going to show you exactly how to set it up step by step. We're also including a bonus tip at the end so that you can get another cool look out of this lighting setup very quickly and easily. Today we're joined by the beautiful Celia, and it looks like she's all ready to go, so let's get into it. Okay, first things first, what the heck is split lighting anyway? So split lighting is a side lighting effect that gives your shots a unique, mysterious, and creative look. This technique basically just lights half of the face, leaving the other side in deep shadow, and it's very dramatic. Split lighting is also a great way to practice your lighting skills because it's not complex and it doesn't require a lot of gear. Remember, the more you practice this stuff, the more you'll be able to master these skills and reproduce the effects easily on your own. For this kind of shot, one light is really all that we need. And in fact, we're going to use flash, but you could improvise with a lot of different light sources at home. Both hard light and soft light could both work equally well for this shot. It really just depends on what your preference is and what you have available to you for equipment. So we'll be taking the edge off of our light today, softening things up with a small $20 softbox, and be sure to put the links in the description. In case you're interested in knowing, I'll be shooting today on the Sony A9 Mark II, and I'm using the 85mm f1.4 G Master lens. Thanks very much to my friends at P&M Photo Media in Lucerne for sending that over. However, any old camera and a medium length lens will do for a shot like this. What's more important is setting up the light. It needs to be 90 degrees from where our subject is sitting, and it's best to have the light source about head level as well. If this ends up being placed too far around the front of our subject, then we're going to get some light spilling across the face into that shadow side, and that's going to ruin the mood of our shot. The other important thing is that the distance of this light shouldn't be very far away. Notice that mine is quite close to my subject, and if you're using a light source that's about this size, I would encourage you to keep it about a half meter or closer to where your subject's positioned. Okay, we're getting some great split light shots here. If you find yourself feeling like the shadows are just a little bit too dark on your portrait, what you could do is add a fill light directly behind the camera. I've just got a flash behind this umbrella. The umbrella is going to soften the light so that it matches the light source. I'm interested to see what this looks like. Profile light is also a very creative and fun way to shoot, and actually all we have to do here is turn our subject towards the light. Okay, so with my subject facing straight into the light like this, I'm just going to slip my main light back a teeny bit so that we get a little bit more of a dramatic modeling effect on her face from my camera position here. That's it. We're ready to shoot profile light.
That would be the end of this lesson. setting up studio lights, equipment, and accessories. Again, this has been Julianne, your Retumban. Thank you for listening.